This is my latest book. It's called Brexit 2029, and it's set in a dystopian Britain on the 100th anniversary of the Wall Street crash. Post-Brexit Britain has resulted in people smuggling and bartering in order to survive, and we meet our hero Aubrey East, who is about to fall in love with Adel, with devastating consequences. Chapter 1. The First Memory. Falling in Love. The first memory I have of Poseidon Bay was a bar called the Captain Benbow. It was a maze of rectangular rooms with cream matte paint on plastered walls. Ceiling fans were spinning overhead, wobbling on their black metal stalks, wafting the smell of steam perfume and cannabis about the place. All the tables were round, and couples in Parisian designer clothes bought from the docks sat drinking strong English craft ale in pint jugs and staring into each other's eyes. Women, dressed in elegant black figure-hugging dresses, smoked from long, elegant cigarette holders. The roaches stuffed deep into the stem, and the licorice-black Rizzler papers sizzling quietly. Wisps of thick cannabis smoke snaked to the ceiling. They had it all across their elegant long legs, leaning forward on an elbow to get closer to their man. Not one of the women was under 5'9", and not one of the men under 6 feet. It was the land of the giants. I surveyed my pint. I was alone, a stranger in town. I dared not stare at any other woman. A glance at a man would be seen as an invitation to fight. I hated drinking beer from a glass with a handle and dimples. It reminded me of my father, not a pleasant man. He always drank his beer out of a jug. I sipped the cool beer. Bitter hops from Kent could not hide the inferior malt. They had added rice and sugar to the mix. That never worked, but it did not stop them from trying. I felt depressed by that. Smugglers even adulterated their own beer. I heard that you could get good craft beer in the big cities, but I doubted it. I should have been chatting to girls. I looked handsome and smart in my grey flannel trousers, blue blazer and white open-neck shirt. Shiny shoes completed the suave look. I looked sophisticated, and clearly my conversation would match my clothes when I spoke to the gorgeous young ladies of Poseidon Bay. But there were no lovely ladies in that rat hole. I hated my boss too. Why had he sent me to this godforsaken place, this den of iniquity? I needed to go to the loo. I walked out of my oblong into another, slightly narrower and slightly longer and slightly shabbier. The clientele were slightly rougher too. They wore white suits and open-neck Britannia blue silk shirts. Each breast pocket was festooned with a red silk handkerchief, spilling out in a defiant celebration of all things British. Finding the toilet, I had a large green neon sign above yet another doorway. I was surprised at how cavernous and clean the place was. You can guess the shape of the room by now, but there were floor-to-ceiling mirrors, a bank of cubicles on the far wall, and on another wall a row of huge oblong butler sinks in heavy white ceramic. Above them, gold taps protruded from under a shelf, laden with fluffy white flannels, which were used for drying hands. It was like an international hotel, not a high street bar. The soap on the shelf, slotted between each pile of flannels, had a warrant from the king. He still maintained his Duchy of Cornwall Estates brand, even though everyone had squatted on his land. It smelt like chamomile and lavender. There was a little wicker basket for the used towels. I tossed 2 into the bottom of the empty basket. Clearly, I was the only one who bothered to wash his hands in this place. I made a mental note to wash my hands back at the hotel. There must be fecal matter on every surface here, I reckoned. I only trusted the beer glass because I had seen it come out of the dishwasher. I could not vouch for the barman who touched the handle. At least the matter would not be on the outside of the glass rather than on the inside, though that might add to the flavour. It needed all the help it could get. Returning to the table, there were 2 dockers standing next to my empty glass. They had their Union Jack hard hats in their hands and were approached by a tall woman in a black dress, followed obediently by her shorter minder or boyfriend, dressed in red, white and blue. She handed each of them a wad of plasticized £20 notes, which they openly checked for authenticity. No one trusted anyone in this place. She smiled, they nodded, and she wafted past them, leaving a trail of steam perfume behind her. They looked at each other without expression, but I could tell what they were thinking, and it did not involve the man who followed the beauty from the room. I thought how horrified she would be if she knew what their plans might be. It was time for action. "Which one of you drank my beer?" I asked bravely, rolling my shoulders so they could see how broad they were under the leather biker's jacket I wore to look hard in places like this. I breathed in so the black jeans actually looked like they fitted me. A paunch is never very threatening. "Not us, Gov. We wouldn't drink beer, fam. Large dip charge. Isn't that right, Roy?" the tallest said, smiling at me. He was big and broad like a bear. His partner was short and squat and smiled at me only once his friend had. He wore a very beery moustache. The froth on it smelt of my pint, I was sure, but it was not good odds. I had been to the gym yesterday, but that had been the first time in 3 months. They were shifting smuggled goods on a daily basis, barrels of cognac, boxes of perfume, bottles, which they unloaded by hand. The forklift trucks used too much electricity, and the tidal boom power station, which was being built for this part of the coast, was 3 years behind schedule, as well as 3 times over budget. The power cuts would have brought all these smuggling activities to a halt if it weren't for grafters like these. They would get their tips, what they called bunts, anywhere they could. Normally it was a percentage of what they were unloading. In my case, it was my drink. It was stupid of me to leave my pint unattended. They left sharpish. I looked around the room. If anyone had witnessed the altercation, they were doing a very good impression of carrying on as if nothing had happened. Obviously, smugglers shrugged and kept to themselves to themselves. I was down to my last tenner, enough for a pint. There was no way I would visit the cash machines at dark around this place. I would get some more money out in daylight hours. It was a company cash card. All the expenditure would have to be accounted for, and all drinks would be docked from my wages at the end of the week. My boss was tough. Striding up to the bar, I waited my turn, 1 barman and 3 customers. You never had to wait long there. People nurse their pints these days, along with a lot of other things. "Another pint of Pope's toe, please. Someone snaffled my pint," I complained, hoping he would replace my pint for free. If I was looking for sympathy, the barman's raised eyebrows did not instill me with confidence. "Hardly surprising, is it? You are in the biggest smuggling harbour in the world, I should think, Einstein." "How did you know my name?" "Is that really your name?" "No, just kidding. I'm new in town. I heard Finnian Bay was a tough place, but I thought my pint would be safe." The barman looked at me as if I were mad. I stood my ground. I was going to get another pint, even if I had to pay for it. "No chance. If you've got a complaint, then have a word with the manager. Here he comes," the barman assured me. "You are over 25, aren't you?" "Of course," I lied. "Good," he said, obviously not believing the irony, and his voice rang out like a monastery bell. And we both knew half the people in the place were underage. He set the 3/4 filled glass jug on the counter and pretended that the froth on the top that brought the level to the brim was part of the drink. I stared at him, willing him to top up my drink. We both knew it was a short measure. He stared back at me, willing for me to pay up. I caved. "How much is that?" I asked. £9.95, please." "Thanks." I knew in Poseidon Bay arguing was useless, and I was not going to ask for change. He knew it, everyone knew it. 5p coins had gone out of circulation 6 years after Brexit. That's why they set the price like that, after the pennies. Look after the pennies. No need to look after the pounds. No one would argue over 5p. I was not going to be the first. Besides, I had spotted the manager wending his way towards me. He slipped past the barman and opened the flap of the bar, walking through the gate, bolting it behind him, and deftly putting the flap back. He turned to face the throng sitting in front of him. It was my chance. "Excuse me, landlord, but my pint was just stolen," I exclaimed angrily. My acting abilities were second to none. I played puck like a professional actor. "Happens all the time here. We sell beer. We don't provide security for it," he noted as he lifted the bar, stepped through the gate and closed the bar behind him again. "The police won't come here after one of their squad cars was pushed into the harbour. Those electric cars don't like water." It was a shocking waste of life. I put my pint on the cigarette machine in order to talk to him without a pint as a prop. Even though he was moving through the bar, I was determined to stick with him like glue. I was his shadow. I followed him that closely, talking at his shoulder. "I appreciate that, but what exactly are you doing to keep everyone safe here?" I asked indignantly. He would no doubt buy me a replacement pint just to get me off his back and out of his hair. "Come with me and I'll show you," he replied tersely, surprising me by his reply and by the fact, as he spoke, he was rolling up his shirt sleeves like a street fighter. I briefly wondered if he was going to have a pop at me. I turned around to grab my pint and follow. It was already gone. Yet there was no one there. The place had originally been a 15th century inn. I would have believed there was a dipsomaniac ghost haunting the place if anyone had told me. Hurriedly following the landlord, I caught up with him at a large rectangular table with bentwood chairs on either side. I noticed a pile of cans and glasses piled up in front of two lovely-looking local girls. They were nursing their beer, seemingly oblivious to the mess. Next to them were 6 smugglers, you could tell. They had their white suit jackets on the back of their chairs, Britannia blue shirts undone so much that wisps of chest hair peeped out from the open neck, royal red blazers, and Union Jack cufflinks. "Right, boys," the landlord announced with a friendly manner. He was obviously used to dealing with characters. "We can't allow cans brought in, and your glasses you've piled up in front of you and in front of the ladies. They need to be put back on your side or taken to the bar." His instructions were met with incredulity. On the far end was a freckly-faced teenager who seemed to be the ringleader. He swung back and forth on his chair, defiantly. The landlord produced a Phase 3 taser gun from his pocket and hit the close of the white suits with a few hundred volts of electricity. It's like he had 17 piranha fish in his white suit trousers. The poor boy went into spasm for 30 seconds, screamed in agony, and collapsed back in his chair unconscious. There was a flurry of activity while the other 4 cleared away, taking the detritus up to the bar. The ringleader swung on his chair. It was my chance to make a name for myself. The landlord had shock value. I just had to be brave. A tough reputation as a salesman is always needed these days. "Yeah, those cans need to be recycled, and you shouldn't be swinging your chair," I thundered like Thor with a headache. As I passed the corner of the table, I pushed the ringleader's shoulder, forcing all 4 legs on the floor. He looked up into my eyes, a sneer on his face and a death stare. His lips twitched as though he was going to speak. I noticed that he was a typical leader, good-looking, tall and charismatic, everything I was not. I was taking on Alexander the Great. Only in my rush to make a name for myself, I had neglected to notice exactly to whom I was talking and who exactly I was taking on. I am fairly tall, fairly good-looking, and fairly good fun to be with. He was the Adonis above all others, the epitome of all 3. The presence of the landlord and his electric pacifier may have been the main reason why he did not rip my head from my body. Perhaps he was polite and kind to strangers, or he was biding his time, because he felt revenge was a dish best enjoyed cold, or maybe he was waiting for there to be less witnesses around. "Now, lads, you leave these girls be if you want to avoid a bolt from heaven," the landlord warned, shaking his taser in the air like Zeus holding a thunderbolt above his head and deciding his target. The other smugglers meekly sat down, having cleared away, ignoring their unconscious colleague. He was still out cold. His chin rested on his chest, his body still slumped. The girls were talking animatedly, pretending nothing was going on. That was the way in Poseidon Bay. "Yeah," I growled. "My name is Aubrey East. I'll be in town for a while, so I'll get to know all of you sooner or later." I surveyed the faces, looking to see if I had impressed anyone. I got another deadly look from the ringleader. I think one of the girls secretly glanced over at me, sighing with admiration, but she could have been rolling her eyes and groaning. It was difficult to tell. It was time to leave. I was not sure how much charge was left in the landlord's electric cattle prod. I walked out onto the fire escape, my leather shoes tapping out a tune on the metal grid beneath my feet. I trotted noisily down the steps and into the beer garden. To the left, I spotted a lane. If the 6 smugglers were coming after me, they must have completed ninja training. I could not hear footsteps on steel. I was assured by the silence behind me, but the walk to my hotel was going to be dangerous. I dared not look back. Far ahead in the lane, within calling distance, was a group of rugby players coming for an evening pint, still dressed in their sports clothes. I had noticed another team sitting in the beer garden in rugby shirts, shorts and socks, their filthy boots piled up at the end of the benches. If I was attacked from behind, it was likely both teams would save me. I was confident of that. I felt sure that a single person attacked by half a dozen wimpy-looking teenagers would be rescued. Rugby players are tough and hate injustice. I know that much. Luck was finally on my side, but I was thirsty still. I had walked for 3 days to get to Poseidon Bay and had only wet my whistle on a sip of beer. I would have to buy a litre carton of water at the hotel. Maybe I would eat out tomorrow night if I could pull off a deal. Tonight I had to look forward to a half tin of pilchards and a hunk of baguette. Tomorrow would be my second day in Poseidon Bay. I'd finally made it to the most famous den of iniquity on earth. I wondered what the place must have been like before Article 50 was triggered and the smugglers moved in. My boss had helpfully advised me to read Moonfleet. The book was set around here in the 18th century when smuggling was civilised. I wondered if I would be able to see the latest wreck, a Czech freighter run aground when the privateers turned off the lighthouses and blocked the GPS signal along the coast. It had floundered on Seaton Beach, only 10 miles away. I might get a lift there after a good night's sleep and a hard day negotiating. There was a good pub according to my boss, and I might pick up some bunts on the shore. If not, if it was a hot day, I might go for a quick dip. With thoughts swimming in my mind, I suddenly realised I was at the hotel reception, and I was in one piece. In my room I laid out a blue, red and white silk tie, my navy suit and a white shirt on the computer desk next to my bed. I slipped a pair of highly polished brogues under the desk. I stripped off my white shirt and slid my trousers over my legs. There was an alcove with a curtain behind which I had stowed my roll-up rucksack and a linen bag. I gathered up my clothes, slipped out of my socks and popped all my dirty clothes in the linen sack. I have to be highly organised, living out of a suitcase and visiting people around the country. Wrapping a towel around my waist, I walked into the shower next door. Travelling around the country necessitates minimising everything. A small sponge bag containing a 100ml plastic bottle of shampoo, a 100ml plastic bottle of shower gel, a 100ml tube of toothpaste, a 150ml roll-on deodorant, and electric toothbrush. I bought my own tiny towel, but the hotel had provided me with one that was one size up. Not quite the size of a swimming towel, but close. The shower made me feel better. The water was hot. They must have had solar panels on the roof. Drying my hair afterwards, I thought about the meeting with Lawless. I knew he was interested. Otherwise, why would he see me? All I had to do was negotiate a good price if I wanted to keep my job. I could not blow the negotiations, no matter what happened. I had to seal the deal. My boss would sack me immediately if I didn't. I wrapped myself in a fresh towel, my own, and drew back the alcove curtain. Reaching up on to the single shelf above all my gear, I carefully took down a plastic sandwich box, being careful not to tilt it. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I opened it, relieved to see nothing had spilt from the tin. Pilchards in tomato sauce would not be on my list of final meals before execution, but I was hungry and feeling depressed. I eat when I feel down. Comfort food is my thing. The baguette was still dry. No sauce had sloshed out onto the bread, which was the result. Even the stale chew baguette provided some comfort. I went to bed on a full stomach, which put me in the top 10% of the population, which made me somehow feel ashamed and better, both at the same time. Tomorrow morning, the rest of my baguette would be hard, just like my day. And that is the first chapter. I hope you enjoyed it.